Yes. Okay, so I'm recording the meeting, and so I'm going to ask all of you if you can please mute yourself. And feel free to unmute yourself at any point in time if you have something to say, or you can also put it in the chat. Linda will help me kind of watch that. So hi, everybody. This meeting, like I said, is recorded. It is our Housing with Services team meeting, August 2022. And as we start all of our meetings, if you would care to join me in prayer, please do. May your peace be in our hearts, your grace be in our words, your love be in our hands, and your joy be in our souls. May your love surround us, your spirit guide us, your voice cheer us, your peace calm us, your shield protect us, your wisdom arm us, wherever you may lead us. Amen. I'm going to mute myself for a second and cough. I seem to have a frog in my throat today. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got lots of new leaders to welcome. So just I'll kind of share who they are. We have Ariel Miller, who is the new executive director of Serenity White Bear Lake. Serenity White Bear Lake also has Jody Pearl, who is the housing director. I believe she starts this week. She might even be on the call. So we're going to welcome her. Kathy Hughes started on a couple weeks ago, I think even early August, and she is the housing director down at Red Wing. And then we have Jamie Sosted, and she will be the director of the housing director, Shakopee The Gardens, and she will start on 9/7/22. Gorma Tungbe is the assisted living director over Shakopee. So she currently resides over both Windermere Way and the gardens down in Shakopee. And then we have a couple of folks who aren't new. They've been around for a while, but they kind of had new roles. So Cassie Rudy up in Crookston, she was the housing manager, took on a different job within that campus, and Diane Grove was and is the assisted living director of nursing. When the housing leader position opened up, they kind of reorganized. And so Cassie and Diane, on top of their other roles, are going to tag team and be co-leaders over the Crookston assisted living community. So welcome to your new role there. Maggie Holmes is the interim executive director of Madonna down in Rochester. And actually, I just saw an email that is Molly Winthrop is now filling in on that role there. And then Brian Paddock is the ED in Duluth. So you know Brian, he's been around for quite a while. He has been the administrator of the nursing home. And with Barb's retirement, he has been promoted to become the executive director there. So we welcome all our new leaders, our returning leaders to the Benedictine team. And there we go. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right. The next thing I wanted to do, there's been a lot of talk about the dashboard. And I know that Jerry Carley went through this in great detail with the executive directors. So you guys, not all executive directors, but some, just kind of the newer ones to help them understand how to work these reports. But I wanted to share them with you because I think it's really important that everybody understands how these work, what they are, and what you need to do in order to have this data be correct. So lots of questions have been coming out about this. So there's two different reports. And you'll notice this one is the weekly labor metrics 8/11 through 8/17. This one is the SAM report. The other one is the Anthony report. I'm going to show you that one as well. This is the Anthony report. This one comes out every 2 weeks. Now, the difference between these two is this report comes from payroll. So it is the actual, what did we pay for people? What hours did they actually pay, time clock and get paid for? This report comes from the time clock and scheduling, the schedules that you put into Matrix. And this comes from SAM. And this comes out every week. So as the person who's leading housing, you should be looking at this report every single week And it's kind of that real-time report that lets you know, oh, I need to adjust my staffing, or I don't. And then that way, when the actual payroll report comes out, which is going to be quite a bit behind because you got to get through payroll and then you got to run the report. So it's going to be a couple of weeks behind. That way there's no surprises on that. So we're going to go through this one first. And I'm just going to kind of show you, even though I know Innsbruck is a nursing home, it's a good example here of just some of the things to show you. So if you're looking at this report, you're going to see right here is the second column in each category is the PPD, the per person per day number. Okay. So if I'm Innsbruck and my per person per day is 2 hours and 46 minutes per person, I'm going to multiply that by my budgeted census. And that is going to give me my actual number of hours that I should be staffing in a day. So if I take, I'm just going to grab a calculator here. If I take 2.46 times 96 is 236 hours per day that Innsbruck would staff their direct aides based on this report. Now, as you can see, his census is a little bit below the 2.46. And so what he's going to do to say, okay, well, my census is not 96, my census is 95. So I'm going to take this 2.46 and multiply it by 95 to get what my actual staffing should be. And so if I do that, basically, because it's only one person difference, I'm going to need to cut my hours by 2.46 hours. Does that make sense? In my direct aides. So for every person who's missing, I'm going to cut another 2.46 hours. For every person I gain over the 96, I'm going to add 2.46 hours. So it's just a simple math. It's this times this is my budget. This times this is what my reality should be and how many staffing hours I have. This number is what you put into SmartLinks in the schedule as the number of staff that are actually scheduled. So I picked Innsbruck, even though it's a nursing home, because I think it's a good example here of how you would look at this whole report. So you can see Innsbruck understaffed. They only staff 2.31. So they're 0.10 times 95 short on staff. So if you look at that, you're like, oh, okay, they need to add staff. Well, the reason this is under is if you look over here under the medication aides, they don't have any medication aides budgeted, but they have 0.16 medication aides working. So what they did is they didn't have a CNA, so instead they used a medication aide. So in this case, you're going to look at both of these numbers and say, oh yeah, okay, he's staffing right on, actually even just a smidge above because he's using a medication aide. So you want to look at each one of these columns, but you may need to kind of look across a little bit to have the story be told. Does that make sense? So he staffed 0.16 plus 2.31 times 95, and he should be right on staffing. Over here is the same thing. It's the direct RN LPNs, and he cut it a little bit, but he's also, under budget here. And then he's got the nursing admin, and then the total nursing. So if one of these is yellow, showing it's over, but if this is not yellow, again, it may be just fine. You just may have had to move people around for some reason or another. So you want to look at the total, you want to look at the individual people and the total nursing. If you're seeing that this is under, but like the RN LPN is over and they're working as aides, then that's something that you're going to say, okay, that's fine for a little bit, but it's an area that you're going to want to be addressed. Why are the nurses working the floor? What's going on here? So it's also not just only to keep your PPD or your budget in line, but it's also to help you understand what you need to hire and what's going on in your nursing department. Okay, so then you're going to get your total over here, total nursing, which is simply adding it up. If I add this number, which is the schedule, the number of persons scheduled, plus this person, plus this person, plus this equals the total nursing. If I look at my budget, this is my budget. Same thing, all of these, that equals the total budget. And for my total nursing, again, my budget is 4.96 times 96. My actual is 4.87 times 95. That's how many actual hours I'm working in a day. Any questions on that? Oh, I see a chat. So staffing is based on census, not on care plan need. Good question. We'll get to that, Lisa. Staffing is based on a couple of things. But yes, this is your budget. This is what you are. It is based on census, and this is what your OVPs are looking at. So I'm going to get back to you what you're saying, Lisa, because you have a good point there. But if your staffing needs change or things change, you're going to want to look at your budget, and you might want to revise this. And so that's a conversation that your executive director would have with your OVP if the needs have changed. So nursing and housing leaders, when the executive director is doing the budget every year, you should be carefully looking at this, and I'll show you the staffing in a second, and you should be looking at your staffing, and you should be giving feedback to your executive director on whether these numbers need to change in the budget. And if it's mid-year, that's a different discussion, but you still want to have that conversation. Because yes, this is based on your history. This is based on your acuity for historic. And this is what, and that's what drives these numbers. And yes, this is what it should be staffed on. And your staffing person should be looking at this, and they should be adjusting it every day. The other thing that I'm going to show you is if you look over here, you're going to see pool use. So Innsbrook is not overstaffed, but had they been overstaffed and used pool, then that is an issue as well, right? You have too much staff, people should be going home early, you have too many bodies on the floor, and you're paying a premium price because they're overstaffed. So if you look at Innsbrook, yes, they've got pool, but it looks like it's an appropriate use because they are actually understaffed and they're actual. Here's one where you can see their census is down. It looks like they have not adjusted for census. They have not dropped their hours. So their total nursing is over, and they're using pool to do it. So this is one where, as the housing director, I would be looking at this and having a conversation with my director of nursing saying, we're not only overstaffed, but we overstaffed with pool. So this is that opportunity to really look at, do I need this much pool in my building? So here's one, and some of you are really small. So sometimes these numbers are because you hit minimums as well. But here's an example of one where, again, their census dropped. They needed to adjust for census. They didn't get a chance to do that adjusting for census. However, their total nursing is under budget. So they might be able to, depending on what this pool is there for, they might be able to cut a few hours of pool, but overall they're still under budget. So how you get these numbers correct, you have to make sure that in SmartLink, somebody is entering your census, because you want the census to be right, and that you're entering the schedule. So pool people should be entered into schedule. People who are picking up shifts should be entered into schedule. The schedule should always be updated because this is coming from the schedule. Now, if you want to look at trends, you can come to this next page right here. And you can see, I can do SNF, let's do total assisted living. Should be a total assisted living in here somewhere. Well, let's look at Shakopee, because we're going to see the difference here, because Shakopee is going to change quite a bit. So you can see in trends with Shakopee, their budget is 120. They were actually at 67. And here they overstaffed, but they have gotten that back in alignment. So you can see the trends, and you can see the improvement as time goes by, as they're entering it. Okay. All right. So now we're going to switch to the Anthony report. And it's going to be the same thing. It's just going to look a little bit different, where it's going to be, you have to enter the occupancy. And if it's not entered correctly, this report is going to be off whack. So if it looks like these numbers are not in place, or not correct. Like, for example, right here, it's saying that the Gertrude's is at 2.50 on a budget of 2.17. However, I know in the past, this number was not updated, so that picture may or may not be right. So you want to make sure that your census is correct. And then this is what was actually paid for. And so here's Wind Your Way, there's your census, there's your direct aids. And here's an example, Lisa, where it's actually even better because her census is higher than budgeted. So she should be adding staff based on this, add 1 hour of staff a day for every person above. So this, she's at 88, her budget is 80. So she should be adding 8 hours of staff a day. So again, this is based on history of the building. And if something dramatic changes, this should change, but this is how we would budget. And this, again, is the actual. And you can see in here, and it is in the other as well. You've got culinary, and in the actual payroll, you also have therapy, nurse pool paid, hours put into it, CNAs, direct nurse premium, non-productive hours, which is your training. So if you're training people, you want to make sure on the time clock that they are clocking in under training and not clocking in as if they're working the floor, because that will make sure that they're over here and not in your productive hours. And so again, you've got your total here, your total culinary, total therapy, total nursing, and then total with without therapy and without pool. And so this can kind of help you in understanding whether you have opportunity in getting rid of some pool. And you can look at the cost per day as well. Okay. So back to Lisa's question. I want to pull up, this is in the Minnesota survey book, but I can give this to all of you. This is really, in Minnesota, you must, by law, assess your staff every 60 days. Every 6 months. In other states, it's a good idea. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at your labor and your PPD report. Am I on track with my labor report? If my labor is 2 for every person, multiply that by the number of people you have and make sure it matches, right? Your PPD report, that's based on your history. Then you're going to check your history. You're going to look at your points and your level of care. And you're going to review for a significant increase or decrease in cares and services. So if you have everybody who was a level 1 and now they're aging in place and they're all level 6 now, that's a significant change. So you don't want to just ignore that and say, I have to do the PPD. This is your budget and your administrator will be responsible for that. But if your acuity went up, so did your revenue, right? So then what you're going to do is you're going to have a conversation with your executive director and you're going to say, yes, the PPD no longer fits this, but my percentage of staff to revenue is going to be the same. So you can kind of figure out your new normal so that you're saying, I have more revenue, so I can have more staff. So even though the PPD says here, I can bring it up here to the same amount that I'm getting the extra revenue. And that's why it's really, really important that you document all of your cares, particularly the extra services. Because if your revenue is not increasing, and you're saying you need more staff, something's wrong. If your points and level of care are going up, so will your revenue, and so will and therefore you can add more staff. And that's the conversation you can have with your executive director. And then when the budgeted time comes around, you would review the staff again, and you could adjust the budget.
Yeah, it should be done here.
That make sense?
Does that work? Okay.
Other things that the RN wants to take, or the nurse or the person in charge of nursing wants to take into consideration is, observation and interview with direct care staff and your residents. Are your call lights getting responded to? Do you have your compliance report? You look at, are they documenting care? Are they missing cares? Are they slow on cares? What's happening there? So you're going to want to look at that. You're going to want to talk to people. You're going to want to look at your compliance report in Matrix. You're going to want to look at your call out report. We just talked about the revenue. If your care is above budget, so should your revenue. You're going to want to look at your master schedule and smart links and make sure that that's right. How many call-ins am I having? Am I having falls? Is there something that's coming up that I'm going to need to adjust the staffing because I know that there's going to be a winter storm and I'm going to need extra staff or whatever. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to look into. So to answer your question, Lisa, staffing takes in a lot of things into consideration, but it's going to be based on this. And if there's a variance, we need to understand why. Question, thoughts on this? Okay. All right, our dashboard review. So here's our dashboard for those of you who are new. This is in eSource. You go right here and then you can type into search dashboard and this will bring it up and you can bring it into your own communities. You can change the measurements here to adjust just for assisted living. And it'll come up and again, you can save your filter, you can have it and so that you can watch how you are doing on these scores. Where these come from is Benedictine's strategic plan. And these are the components that are leading into assuring that we meet our strategic plan. So I'm going to go through this and then I'll review the strategic plan as well. This is what we should be focusing our time and attention on. And so when we're in Duluth, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, I want you to think about kind of from your mind, what are some things that are going to lead improvement in these areas? And if so, how can we as a support team support you in doing that? So the first one is the safety index. And this is med errors and falls. And if I click on this, it tells me what this all is. So it's pain, falls with injury, pressure ulcers, that's MDH. And then medication rate is pulled from ROMP. So all the explanations are behind it. So in this one, we're right on the 5. And again, this one, all of these need to have the census entered into these various databases so for this data to be accurate. Satisfaction for spiritual opportunities is above, but still room for improvement there at 48%, feeling excellent for our spiritual care opportunities. And we still have opportunity in overall resident recommend. So this was just done in the spring. And so we didn't quite hit the goal that we were looking for. We're still looking for a goal of 52. So last year we worked on point of compliance and resident concerns. And so it did move the dial a little bit, but we need to move it more. So again, this is an area, what can we do to support you? A lot of work coming in life enrichment that I think will help this as well. This is the associate engagement index, doing pretty good. New associate 90-day retention and 12-month retention is in the yellow right now. Time to fill is the amount of time it takes to get an employee onboarded from the time that the position was posted. Philanthropic gifts, this is more of a system score here. And then bad debt, that we're just coming out of COVID. And we'll show you the financials so you can see that we're fine that. And then consolidated cash flow, which is good. It means that we're green, we're nice and strong, we've got enough cash to survive through the pandemic. So that's the operations. That's the one you should be looking for in yourself. And then the system as a whole is looking at very similar, but they've got a few additional scores that they would add in here. One of them being the housing and SNF comparison, where we are looking for housing to be 60% of our portfolio. So with Anoka coming on board, we're now at 54%. So we're getting really, really close to that number and moving that forward. So that's good. And actual budget, we are $3,813,000 ahead of budget. So doing well there as well. I'm not putting anything in point rate. You mean smart links, Diane? Diane, can you take yourself off mute? She had a question. I just want to make sure. So it's smart links. So the schedule should be in smart links. When you get a chance, Diane, if you can take yourself off mute because I'm not really sure what point rate is. Okay, so that's the system information. Oh, did I say Point Rate? Oh, thank you for correcting me, Diane. No, I meant Smart Links. I'm so sorry. Smart Links. And the med errors is being pulled from ROMP. Information is being pulled from ROMP for the assisted livings, and then also for in the MDS for the nursing homes. Okay, so that's the scorecard. And let's go into our financials and we can take a look at that. Give me 1 second here. Financials, where'd they go? Okay, so on to our financials here. Make it a little bigger for you. So it's good news this month, though we're still a little bit off. So this is operations. This is coming from us. And so our budget was a loss of 272,000, and we lost almost $2 million. So we still have some opportunity for us to kind of improve. And you'll see where that's coming from as we go through. The non-operating revenue can be the insurance pools, it can be stocks, things like that. And they did very good. They were $5 million ahead of budget. So overall, we are very strong with a $3.8 million positive variance. And so some of this we can take credit for. If you look right here, you can see the average census. The blue is the nursing home and the green is the housing. This line here is the housing's budget. And you can see by this green line going across that we are ahead of budget for our census. So that is contributing significantly to the health of our communities, which is great. Here you can see how the different groups are doing actual compared to budget. So group 3 is the new people. This would be Northfield, Windermere Way. I think Anoka might be included in this. So people who are expected to lose money. And so they lost less than expected. So that's really good. Group 1 and 2 are more the kind of the tried and true. They've been here forever. Ones that are maybe struggling a little bit. And so you can see on that we just need to help shore up some of these guys here. Now, again, that's housing and nursing homes. So just to be aware of that. And scrolling through, you can see this is the census, and you can see the census variance in that the housing percentage of labor to revenue is supposed to be 67 and it's actually 71. So that goes back to that PPD report and the pool. We're still spending more on employees and pool and salaries and overtime, et cetera, than we had budgeted for. So that's an opportunity, and that's playing into part of this budget. And here's census. And you can see in housing, census is looking good. In the North region, they are ahead of budget. And in the South region, they are ahead of budget, a budget of 953. We actually have 968. And for total, we are actually 23 people ahead of budget for our total housing census. So keep that going. And if we can just bring down the pool and keep this strong, we are gonna rock it, because a lot of this is coming from pool and census. So again, if you look through here, here's the housing. You can just see a couple of the buildings are struggling a little bit. some things that I think we can recover from. The gardens, one of their issues is they're waiting for the sisters, so they were holding some apartments. So that's going to be turned around. We can see some that are still kind of in some transitions here. But overall, in general, the operating margin is $249,000 loss, but we were expected to lose $529,000. So, and then when you bring in the obligated group, they were expected to lose 8,000 and they made 151. So as a total, we are doing very, very well. And again, that is attributed to you guys and the effort that you've been putting in. So thank you for that. And then again, same story here when you bring in Serenity and Villa St. Benedict. They're doing well. They're very close to their census. They're ahead on finances. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, there's Missouri's regs. Want to show you two other things that I just want to get your opinion on. You can talk or you can put it into the snap. As it opens up here or in the chat, not the snap. I've been on vacation for a week, so my brain is coming back to work here. So this you guys may recognize. This is the MD orders for admission. This is Minnesotans, but we do have them for all the different states. And this is in the admission paperwork. So it was suggested that we take it out of the admission paperwork and we actually put it into the tour documents so that when we are requesting medical records, we are requesting the orders as well, so that the person evaluating the admission, determining whether we can take care of them, actually has the orders. It's been in the admissions because we're saying, well, we want to wait until they actually plan to live here before we get an order, because we don't want the doctor to think that we're going to fulfill the order if we decide that we can't take care of that person and they can't live there. So that's why this is in admission, but we can certainly put it into the tour if the nurse is on the call and the people determining the admissions feels like they're not concerned about the doctors thinking that they're being admitted with the orders. So thoughts on whether you'd like to see this more in the tour document and get it right up front as you evaluate whether to stay versus in the admissions when you've already said that they can stay. Lisa, you want to give a thought? Oh, chats. Okay, good. Kathy, I can send you the financials. They're not typically kept in eSource. Definitely agree to have it in the tour documents. We've been doing that way for a while. Okay, thank you, Kendra. That's awesome. Tour documents, tour docs. I like it in tour docs. Okay, tour docs wins. We'll move it. Okay, another question for you here. This is dependent. This is something Steal Shamelessly, right, from Anoka, that I want to see if you guys want this added to your admission documents. I can do it in a couple ways. I can just put it in tools at eSource so you can get it if you want to use it. I can actually add it to the admission documents and the checklist. So it's just simply a form that says by signing this, I'm notified that I have refused the dependent system. So in a case of emergency, I can't call somebody. So this form is here, and then the other one, and I didn't say, but where is it? The other one is saying that I received the pendant, and I understand that if I lose it, I'm going to have to pay to replace it. So thoughts on these forms? As a tool, or would you like it in the admission package? Give you a second to put it in the chat. Kendra likes it. Kathy likes it. Any other thoughts? definitely in the admission packet. Okay. I'd like to refuse up to 911 portion as our staff won't know when 911 is showing up. So Cindy, talk more about that anyway. So if somebody doesn't have a pendant and they can't call your staff, what option would they have other than calling 911? They would call on their own. Okay. All right. So if anybody has any grave concerns about adding to the admission package, let me know. Otherwise, we will. Right. So this would be somebody who's refusing to have a pendant or a whistle or what have you. And if they don't refuse, then you wouldn't use this form and they would call your staff. Okay. All right. So we'll get those added in. Back our PowerPoint here. Let me just see, was there? Oh, yep, copy. And I just wanted to go over this a little bit before we get into Duluth. This was part of our priorities for last year, was we were trying to improve the customer experience, assuring that they're all getting everything that they need, everything that's in this service plan was a part of that plan. Linda sends this out on the 1st of every month. So this is from July. So this data is a little bit old now. Ideally, everything in here should be green. Again, we've got some new leaders here, just to make sure you understand what this is. So when an aide looks at the service plan and then marks, yes, I did this task, then it is documenting that the person received the care. So here at Rosewood and Lemoore, we can be sure that we can prove that every person received every service that they have asked for from us, and we have the documentation to show it. Where we're looking here, in 40% of the cases, we cannot tell if the service plan was followed or not. So it's really important that all of this go green. Now, the reason that it's typically not green is because people are documenting in the wrong spot in Matrix, and or they've reverted to paper for some reason because it's pool and they didn't have a login or other process issue with onboarding people. Because nobody would willfully say, I refuse to document, right? So obviously there's a process issue behind why this is not green. So take a look at this report. If you're new and you didn't get it, email Linda Johnson. So again, Linda Johnson owns this report and she can get it to you and help you interpret your results if as you are looking through this, any of yours appear to be in the yellow, because we want this to be green and ideally 100%. Okay. All righty. So Duluth. So September 13th, 14th, and 15th. The pre-conference is on the 13th, and housing leaders and nurses are expected to come to this pre-conference. I've had a couple questions about that. So there was a little bit of confusion going on because there was a sales pre-conference and there was a housing pre-conference. And I know that about a fourth of you fulfilled both roles. And so it's important to know that due to some issues with the training and the software that basically the sales was to teach the new sales software that's being rolled out, and that got pushed back. So the persons who are solely responsible for sales don't have to come to pre-conference anymore. The persons who are responsible for housing and sales need to come to the housing meeting, and the persons who are just housing need to come to the housing meeting. So the admin and the nursing. So again, this is a change. Nursing used to be all grouped together. And we find that the agenda makes a little bit more sense if we have nursing come to the housing meeting as opposed to the nursing meeting. The other nursing meeting will be focused more on the SNF, and then we will cover both areas in nursing. So just remind you of that. So 10 to 4, and then the big conference starts at about 4. There's a dinner, and then training all day the next day, and then a dinner or an event, and then the 15th, it's a half a day. So should be there for all 3. And as we prepare for that, I just wanted to cover the agenda a little bit here. The actual agenda looks a little more formal, but and Linda can weigh in here. So one of the things that I've been working with you guys and we have been struggling with is that you have to manually take the level of care out of Matrix, document it on the service plan, and then have somebody manually enter it into a different software also owned by Matrix. And so it is ripe for error. As you guys know, whenever there's a transfer, there's an opportunity for something to fall through. And it does. Almost every time we audit, we see that there are errors because, again, humans are humans. And so Matrix has created a bridge. It's a process. It doesn't automatically go in the background. It's something that we're going to have to use and manipulate. But it is a process by which that month-end reconciliation that you guys should be doing with nursing and business office and administration, it's going to give you the tool and populate it for you and make it easier. So Matrix is going to show us, give us a demo of this, and that'll be our first hour and a half here of the conference. Linda, did I explain that right? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry. Yes, I was trying to get to my mute button.
It's okay.
Yeah, we'll do a nice review of it. So
Yes.
it's going to be a nice update.
And then we're going to talk about some organizational chart updates. As we've talked about, that the housing is slowly becoming 60% of our business. And currently it is only Linda and I that are 100% focused on housing. So we're going to do just some updates on what it's going to look like as we continue to grow here. So we'll give you some information on that. And then we're going to talk about getting to yes and pricing review. So this is something that is really about what are some of the creative ways that we can have people live with us. And it's also recognizing that we do need to follow ADA guidelines. And as I work with some, not all, as I work with some folks, there is a little bit of opportunity in understanding what our limits are versus a resident's right to live within our building. And by using other sources, other resources, whatever, how can we help get to yes, and how can we fit within that? So this will be kind of a group sharing your ideas of how you would handle particular persons who are asking to come live, so that we can learn from each other. And pricing review, I know you guys live the pricing, but I think what I'd like to cover here is some practice in how do we explain it. I have gotten some feedback from some folks, and unfortunately sales will not be with us, as I just said, but saying that when we explain it to people, because we can't say this is the amount it'll be, they struggle a little bit with explaining it. So kind of sharing, we can give some ideas of how we would share it. And then again, your feedback to the group of how do you work through the process of I want to live here. What do you tell them about the care? When did they get the exact amount? How do we explain it, etc. So some sharing on that as well. And then we'll review some operational tools, particularly around stand-up and some other things that we really want to make standard across the board. Again, stealing shamelessly, I think Regina has one of the best practices within Benedictine. And so we'll be sharing their tools and some other tools that I think will help in some of the Benedictine standards. And then lastly, we really want to talk about our strategic focus. So we're going to bring some priorities to the table that we think are important and that we'd like to work on for 2023, but we want to hear, more importantly, what you struggle with and what we can help you with in 2023. So start thinking about that. Any questions on that? Okay. And that was all I had for our agenda today. Is there anything that anybody else wants to share? If not, I will give you the gift of time. Thank you for everything you do and have a wonderful week, everybody.
Hey Penny, can you stay on?
I can.
Okay.
Hold on, I want to click off the recording.